Hey guys, with this episode being very much supplement related, we wanted to tell you about the sale that started today in store at the Supplement House in Abbotsford. It's going to be a buy one, get one 50% off, mix and match the entire store. So if you need to stock up, now is the time. If you've ever been interested about how they manufacture supplements, the thought that goes into it, this is going to be the episode for you. So make sure you stick around for this part one and then part two releasing next week. Everybody enjoy this episode and stop by for the sale. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the House Talks podcast. Today, we have a very special guest on. We have the CEO of Proline and Alora, Gra. He's also the main reason why our smoothies in Abbotsford are the best smoothies in Abbotsford, because we use his ISO advanced protein, and it's absolutely incredible. He's been in the supplement industry for over 30 years, coming up with 34, 35 years. Absolutely incredible. And has also originally started with Reflex and was the VP of Nutribolics. Great. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolute pleasure. So for everybody who hasn't been introduced to Proline or Alora products yet, can you tell us why you guys are unique, why you guys are different, and how you're making changes in the industry?
So we're actually our own manufacturer as well, which makes us a little bit unique in comparison to a number of the companies on the market. We also focus on more the science side of the ingredients. We don't generally just put something out because it's trendy. We're always looking for the latest sort of innovation, whether it's theacrine or being into the hormone-free and antibiotic-free ways. We try to set a fairly high baseline, only ever use vegan-sourced amino acids. The Alora side, of course, is all natural, no artificial flavors, sweeteners, colors. And then, we just try to bring high formulated products at reasonable prices. And we're able to do that because we are our own manufacturer.
Do you find that, I guess, freeing in a sense, because you're manufacturing stuff from A to B, making sure that everything's all done properly, that you guys can tell a more unique story and that you guys can stand behind your products a little bit better? Because I know some manufacturers, two different companies will be manufactured in the same plant or something like that, and they don't know maybe exactly every single product that's going in. Do you guys just have that next level of confidence when you guys are delivering that products because you guys are dealing with all the manufacturer?
Yeah, and I will say that the industry's come quite a long way. I do believe that there's far more good manufacturers than there is bad. Back in the day, it might have been slightly shadier. It's really cleaned up. The biggest advantage, again, is we're able to make what we want because we're not as worried about price point. So we're able to operate a little more streamlined than some of the other manufacturers would be when they're using third party to make their products. And because we don't have the same overheads, we're allowed to keep a little bit lower margin. So we pour that back into the formula side. We don't have $1 million advertising budget, but we make products that, like our pre-workout sells for $54.95, should probably sell for $69.99. But we're able to formulate it the way that we want it, not cut a corner, keep the milligram doses up high, use the better of the ingredient profiles. We don't have to use synthetic amino acids. We can use the vegan source. We can always go to the instantized version of something. So that's the way that we like to operate. Like, we're not interested in being the most trendy brand on the market. We just want to be known for making the best products, the best formulas at the best price point. So we're kind of the thinking man's brand.
Absolutely. And just for anybody who is just getting into supplements and might not quite know the technicalities of the supplements, you're talking about vegan derived amino acids, what would be the alternative to that, or how you guys are doing hormone free or naturally sweetened? What's the difference to that somebody might find in a different protein that you guys are doing differently or just on better level?
So on the protein side is, and we talk about this a lot. So we don't want to step out of it and make it seem like we're the only ones who make good products. There's lots of companies who make good products. You can find hormone-free and antibiotic-free whey from other companies as well. But generally, when you start looking at price points, you'll see that escalation of price as it goes up. So we can buy regular whey, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's less expensive. You don't have to source it from particular places. But we're like, why bother? Like, we make a high-end natural isolate, so no artificial flavor, sweeteners, colors, and we use a hormone-free antibiotic whey. Then we make it artificially flavored, because for some people, they're not as concerned about that side of it. They're only concerned about taste, but we use the same whey. Most companies would downgrade because they're trying to achieve that price point. We're able to achieve that price point and still deliver that better product. And whether you're worried about the hormone or the antibiotic free side, if the option is to get that version versus the regular at the same price, choose the other version all the time, right? If we could all afford Porsches, we would drive Porsches. Now, if Porsche brought their price down, we'd all drive Porsches, right? So on the amino acid side, a lot of people are probably somewhat familiar with this. There's been some advertising campaigns that have touched on this over the years. They probably don't realize that a lot of the amino acids coming out of China are sourced from bird feathers, and they use a process for extraction. So if you're vegan or vegetarian, you want to be aware of this. The other is that those products don't absorb the same way. They have a slower rate, a lower rate of absorption. And they're not, you wouldn't go stick a bunch of feathers in a blender, right? Like, you'd always be looking for that premium source. Now, these premium sources always cost more, and that's what stops most people from going from it. It's the same thing with a creatine monohydrate, why you only use a 200 mesh versus an 80 mesh, so that it disperses in water better, that your absorption rate is higher. Leucine, why you instatize leucine is, if you don't, a percentage of it sticks to your glass and you don't even get that product. So a lot of times these things are actually probably more affordable when you really do the analytics on them. And the big thing that I would encourage everybody to learn is learn to read a label, because that's probably the biggest thing that you as a consumer can put into your quiver when you go in and look for products and you're not sure what's good, what's not good. You can ask these questions, but you can also go down that label and look. If a company won't tell you what's in the product, like for milligram dose, don't buy it, because the reason is simple: is if they told you, you wouldn't buy it, right? Like, you see blended proteins, like they have concentrate and isolate in them, and concentrate's always first, the isolate's always second. You don't know what that ratio is, right? It could be 99.9% concentrate and 1% isolate. If you know that and that's what you want, great. If you're thinking it's 50-50, but it's not, and you're paying for it, that's a different thing.
Our customers, I think a lot of them come in now that I feel like consumers are much more intelligent these days, but there's so many resources to go based off of. You go online, there's forums, some might not be true all the time, some have a little bit of truth to them, so they come in with their guard up a little bit more. So I feel like even when you're explaining a product to them and you're letting them know what's in it, like, no artificial flavors, no, like natural flavorings, cold filtered away, as far as the isoadvanced goes, you're pointing at right on the label, then that belief is automatically.
Yeah, you're reinforcing the point.
Exactly, and people do. I feel like they do like that. And I'm not just speaking on the aspect of things getting more expensive. Groceries, everything's more expensive. People do so want to supplement, and they're always looking for a deal. Like, it's like, oh, what can you do for me here? What can you do for me there? And I feel like if you can give them a good product for one, it has to work, right?
Yep.
It is. It's got to work. So that's one side of it. The other side is it affordable? Because it's like, yes, I really do want it, but you know what? Maybe I can't afford $120, $130 cover or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, and it's universal. Everybody wants the best product for the least amount of money they can get, and it doesn't matter if you're buying a car, a supplement, a meal. It's sort of the default. Everybody thinks that now and would want it, and why wouldn't you? Like, I want the best vehicle for my dollar that I can get. I want the best supplement for the dollar I can get. But I also want to know what's in it. And so if you're telling me your product contains glutamine, BCAAs, and taurine, if I'm interested in those ingredients, I want to ensure that those ingredients are at a dose that makes sense. If your product's got 500 grams of glutamine in it and I need 5 grams, well, what does that matter?
Yeah.
Right? And it's something that I think that the companies should actually be mandated to do. I don't even believe that proprietary blends should be allowed.
I was just gonna say that that's like back in the day, like a lot of different companies have proprietary ones.
Oh, everything was.
Everything was. Yeah.
So Canada is interesting because they've sort of adopted that. The customers become a little bit more demanding. So full disclosed labels are more common in Canada than in the U.S. This concept of a proprietary blend, like we're protecting this secret, like anyone can reverse engineer anything, and the only thing you really would be protecting would be your flavoring system. And telling people how much flavoring you use will not help them duplicate the formula. So again, anyone who gives that excuse, they're being disingenuous. It's just not how the industry works nowadays.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of this talk about, and I know it's a labeling thing because when we spoke about it, great. But I remember when we caught wind of Canada's taking away our supplements.
Yeah.
Remember that?
There's like huge uproar.
Even for us?
Was that 6 months ago?
Yeah, was it 8 months ago?
This has been going on in one form or another for 20 years.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Right.
I know it's so great. You really made us feel at peace because us, obviously, as retailers, we're like, okay, well, if this is true, like, goddamn, we just started this thing. And it would suck if this was the case. But even when you went online, there wasn't a lot of information, right, Arvin? Yeah, there was.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, so we could only base it off, and we're trying to decipher this. Like, I remember I even wrote a letter to the local MP, and they honestly didn't really even get a proper answer. But once I spoke with you, great. But could maybe chime in on that a little bit, like kind of what is this, all this stuff? They're taking our supplements away.
So it's kind of, they're not going to take the supplements away, but what they want to do is basically start applying fees to the MPN process. So currently, to get a natural product license, so in Canada you have to have an MPN to sell most products on the market, as long as it's not just a basic fruit product. So what will end up happening is you'll file for your MPN. That gives you the legitimate right to sell the product in Canada, and currently there's no cost. So their new proposal is that they want to start applying fees to both your GMP license or your site license, so for manufacturing, and then they want to apply a fee to all the different classes. So there's 3 different classes of products in our sector: class 1, class 2, class 3, and then anything that will fall into the drug side. So they want to apply a yearly charge to that. So that will have a big effect on the smaller brands, because their volumes are not as high and this cost is reoccurring. And it doesn't matter how much product you sell, the cost stays the same. They're just going to put this on top of it. So you'll have to amortize that. So everyone's supplements, if this goes through, are going to go up. How much they're going to go up? Their first proposal was insane, like absolutely insane. And they've come off of that a little bit and they've put a structure in. But even their structure shows that they want it to increase every year for the next 5 years. So they're trying to make it palatable so that they can sneak it in, where it won't have quite as big of an impact. But by year 5, we're going to be right back to that situation again. So we're all for the regulation side of it. It's great that the government intervenes and applies. Like you can't make a claim on a product unless you can back it up in Canada. Yeah. In the US, you can say all kinds of stuff. Yeah. Like it's their legal system actually enforces what goes on. Here it's the government. And that's the big difference between the US and the Canadian side, is the US is very litigious. So if, amino spiking is actually a really interesting one. So amino spiking is not illegal. You can spike a protein powder with aminos so that your protein looks artificially higher, drives your cost way down, makes your mixability easier, etc. But there was a big uproar because it really got out of hand a number of years ago. But in the US, it got corrected by class action lawsuits, not by the government. So the companies were lawyers were just taking on the cases to sue the companies. And so now no one in the US would dare to do it because they don't want to get sued. Not because it's illegal,
Interesting.
but they just don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
In Canada, we're not like that. So amino spiking here, there's no policing of it. That's part of why you want to read that, to be able to learn that label.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you were to buy a protein powder with added leucine to it, well, that's a win. Leucine is a high-end amino acid shown to increase muscle protein synthesis, shown to do great benefits with a protein powder as well. Glycine, well, glycine's super inexpensive in comparison to whey protein. Still shows up on a nitrogen test as protein. So if you see glycine in your protein powder, you know, how much is there? Is it 500 milligrams? You know, glycine does have its benefits, or is it 5 grams, 10 grams?
Big difference.
Yeah.
I know that we used to be a big thing. I remember years before, there's a couple big companies actually that got caught with it too. I remember when you'd read up on it, the protein. So like, just to break it down even simpler, did a great job explaining that. So if the label says 27 grams, 25 grams, 30 grams of protein, it might only really be 15, 20, 12, something like that. So are you getting what you paid for? No. Are they being honest with you? No, they're not. So,
well, the Arnold series went out of business because of it. Now part of that is well, it wasn't Combat, because Combat's still available through Muscle Farm.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
they were one of the worst offenders in the industry for it. But they also made Arnold's specific series of proteins. So when this all came to light and Arnold became aware of it, he just killed the brand. He didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And so that the brand just doesn't exist anymore. You know, and there were some horrific offenders. So it was pretty common. There were a lot of companies that were doing it at that time, and a lot of brands that you probably consider top-end brands. But it was just so common in the industry. But there was a difference even inside of that. Like, ethically, there's a bit of an issue with it. If you want to tell people that's what you're doing and they still want to buy your product, that's one thing. If they don't know when you're doing that, it's a little bit different. But it's also different if you're adding 1 gram versus 10 grams, right? Like, if I want to buy glycine, I'll buy glycine.
Yeah.
And if I want to buy whey protein, I'll buy whey protein. Now, there's exceptions, like I said, and we're looking at this right now because we're doing a lot of research data. Like, we're huge proponents of leucine. So we're actually seeing whether adding some leucine to our protein powder would be an advantage. The difference, of course, is if we were to do something like that, it would be right on the label how much we added. Like, you'll see on our protein labels, we even tell you how much flavoring we use, how much sweetener we use. Yeah. So we don't want there to, like, we'll just pull the curtain back completely and like our products or you don't like our products, but at least you'll always know what's in our products.
There won't be any questions left to ask as to what's going in your protein. And I think in today's day and age, with social media being so prevalent, you have to be more wary of what you're disclosing, how you're disclosing it, because 15 years ago when Arnold's brand was blowing up, no one really went on social media and went on a rant because a lot of people didn't have it, right? But whereas now something like that comes out, it's a stain on Arnold's legacy for years to come.
Well, social media might be the biggest change the industry's seen in a long time, because, like, an influencer by definition is someone who influences purchases, but they don't do it for free.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we always say the same thing. It's a bit like, people come and say, why don't you have a ton of sponsored athletes? Like, well, I mean, the reality is that if we sponsored a high-end bodybuilder who's top 10 in the Olympia, and then tried to tell people that he's that way because he took our supplements, well, he was that way before, right? Like, now, maybe he'll use those supplements, and of course they'll be beneficial for him, but his physique wasn't built off that.
Yeah.
Right? It was built off his hard work and his time that he's put into it. And he wasn't with us at that time. Now, he might have used similar supplements to ours to help that process, but just, again, seems a little disingenuous to make them think that I got this way because of this. The old Muscle Tech ads were a great example of it. You know, it's, you know, you have former athletes who are in off-season, on-season presentation. Now, since then, Muscle Tech has changed their outlook, and now the athletes that they work with, you know, they're very clean about their presentation, and you know, it's just a different time. But we are seeing now those influencers, you know, a lot of time these people don't know.
They don't. They're just given a script and then they read it, and then you know they're making a commission on it, right?
And it's a new fad every month. It's like
It is.
oxyshred and glutamine.
Yeah, that was big. Like, do you remember that month we sold so much? I don't know, like, what's going on here? It was,
TikTok.
Yeah, it was most of those younger ladies coming in and buying it because.
Who used it for a week at most and saying they lost like this much weight, and it's like supplements will help, but you're not going to see results in a week.
No, anytime somebody promises something that just seems too good to be true, I mean, that's
Slightly too good to be true.
yeah, and there are exceptions. Is like a pre-workout, you're going to feel that.
Oh yeah.
But the performance side of it, like, are you really going to feel that on just one scoop? Like, are you going to see your bench go up 10%? No, it's probably more just to give you the energy and the endurance side of it to do it. A protein powder, honestly, will you even really notice? No. It's just food. Now, you'll notice if you don't get the protein, right? Like you're not going to grow the same level. But we're talking about months or results that are extending out months, not instant gratification. There are a handful of exceptions, you know, like teacrine. It's simple. You take it, you feel it, and it works in that moment. And there is no long-term benefit to it. It's a very immediate type of thing. Something like beta-alanine, the system, or creatine monohydrate, the system has to be saturated. And you'll see those results, and they'll come fairly quickly, but they're not going to come on the day you take it. Yeah. It's one of my biggest laughing points is when people are like, "Yeah, I took creatine, I was stronger." Like, well, creatine had to be broken down into creatine, absorbed into skeletal muscles, and then extracted out, and you had it at a saturation point. So, no, you didn't feel it. It's great that you think you did.
Yeah, that's the placebo side, right?
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean creatine doesn't work. It works exceedingly well.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And that's another thing I noticed too is that, like Arvin said, there's a new fad every single month, or even like certain products. Like there was this big rollout about Garcinia a little while ago. The people were selling the crap out of that, like on Amazon or whatever it is. Like everyone was taking Garcinia. Now we're starting to see it with greens. This part, like AG1's freaking really big, right? And they're throwing it out that have all these influencers on it.
It's all proprietary.
Yeah, and then you look at their dosages. Personally, I would rather take something else. That's just me.
The big problem is that they won't actually tell you what's in it.
Exactly.
Like they'll tell you all the ingredients, but not how much of it.
Yeah.
And again, the reason that they do that is simply because if they told you and you did a head-to-head comparison against other products on the market, there is no chance you would buy that product.
Yeah.
At what they sell it for now, I can't believe anybody buys that product.
$100
Yeah.
a month, like the subscription, or maybe a little bit less.
Yeah.
I think if you subscribe, you save like 15%.
Yeah. And
Like 85 or 86.
yeah, we let our customers know right away. I'm like, for one, if you're getting a greens product and they're separating, like if you need to buy like the antioxidants separate or whatever it is, I'm like, don't get me wrong, like they probably are good. They probably could be good products, could be main word. But you shouldn't have to be spending hundreds of dollars to get your greens and antioxidants.
So this is where learning to read a label becomes important, and it's a lot to ask of the end consumer to have the level of knowledge base. But if you're buying, like the concept of greens is interesting because the primary is this belief that it replaces your fruits and vegetables. That's not really what a greens was intended for. It was designed for cellular energy, a detox system to support your antioxidant levels. Myself personally, like one, I wouldn't buy a greens that didn't have a berry component, but just adding berries is not the thing. You need to know the ORAC value, so the strength of the antioxidant value. Again, most companies won't tell you that because if they did, you'd realize that it's really just there to be on the label. And it should have a probiotic as well. Yeah. And there's lots of products on the market that'll fit that bill. they'll do it for way less than $100. But you should be able to look at all the individual ingredients and see that these things are dosed out the way that they should be. Because really, what's 10 milligrams of broccoli going to do for you? Like, if weigh 10 milligrams of broccoli, like lick a carrot, you'll get 10 milligrams of carrot, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's unfortunate that sometimes it gets into that. But when you're able to read that and break it down and look at it, and like you say, the customers have access to an amazing amount of information, so they can look it up and go, well, what is a dose of wheatgrass? Like, is 50 milligrams enough, or should it be 500 milligrams? The other thing, and this is something that just started to pop up that kind of shocked me. I was doing a comparison versus another company on the market for greens, and a lot of us use wheatgrass or barley grass or alfalfa, and so it's an extract and it's a juice version of it, so it gives a very high concentration. We're seeing companies now that not only are they not using the wheatgrass juice version of it, they're just using wheat, because they know that people are triggered by wheat, but they don't follow through on the grass side of it. They're completely different products, right? So a lot of times you got to do that little bit of diligence and make sure that your product is going to contain what it says. And if you can't taste even any of the greens in a greens product, and we've done our best to make them taste good, but they're earthy tasting products, so they should have a little bit of it to it at the very least. The other problem is that a lot of times they're just downgrading the formula to achieve a taste, because a lot of people they can't take greens because they just don't like the taste of it. But what's the point of taking if it won't do what it was intended to do? Like, find a capsule then, or whatever the case may be. Find another way to go about it. Find a capsule antioxidant product. Find a different blood detox or energy source. So, and greens to me is like, that's almost the start for all supplementation is a baseline greens product. So if you're going to build your whole program around this centralized product, that product better be the best one you can buy. So.
Absolutely. And you take part in the formulation of the products that you guys make for the companies. When you're developing a product, what's the start base? Like, do you guys pick other products on the shelves and say, how can we make this a better product? Do you guys come in with a clean slate and say, this is what we want in that product? How about do you guys go about making them happen?
We would probably have, if I had to put it down, maybe 3 different approaches. So there's one where you look at a product that's essentially hot in the marketplace, and you look at that product and go, is this a good product? Is this a space we want to be in? And can we make this product better and keep it in the same sort of price point range? And will we be proud of this product? There is a sales aspect to it, of course, with business, and you could take, we'll say product X, super popular on the market. We can't even really figure out why it's popular or what its intention is. Is it a fat burner? Is it an energy product? Is it does it just make water taste good? Like, whatever it is. And then we look at it and go, okay, well, this is what it's being sold for. Here's what we think we could do to make it so that we could have, like, our moral core would be good to put the product forward, that we at least could stand behind it. There's lots of products we don't put out on the market because simply, like, sure, we could make it and we could make it at that price point, but we just can't, right? Like, we'll leave that for other people. Yeah. And now if we can find a spot for that and we can make it what we want. So that's the one. The second would be just taking a category where we think that there's a need, and we have a little bit more of a streamlined approach. So we have a focus on building out particular packages and filling needs. So whether it's a pre-workout or it's muscle protein synthesis, we try to find the best products in that category. We take a look at the competitors, do the analytics on them as well. But then we're like, well, okay, here's our boundaries for price point. This is where the market wants the product to be. This is where the taste profile needs to be. This is the product that we can make in that. And then, will it work? Will it not work? And then the last is really probably just building it in so like a program, like how do we see this fitting into our selection of products? There's lots of interesting things on the market, and God, I don't even know how many supplements there would be on the market, like millions. But we want to keep it around a core, right? Like all the really niche stuff, maybe not necessarily where we want to go, although we make some very niche products, but we feel that they fall into a particular category. Like Teacrine is a fairly niche product,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
but I'm a huge proponent of it. Like, I think the entire population is so over-caffeinated to the point where I don't even think half the time it works for them. And Teacrine allowing that half-life to be extended, allowing you to take less caffeine and feel the same result. 45 minutes or an hour of energy, that's not good, right? Like that up and down is not what I'm looking for. I want to take my pre-workout. I want to get to the gym. I want to put a solid workout in. I want to go home and still have energy. I don't want to be wiped out and just collapsing, having this crash. And Teacrine is probably the greatest equalizer in that. But it's pretty niche, right? Like at this stage, we might be the only ones in Canada making it. And so we'll continue on certain products like that, because again, we're not necessarily looking to be the biggest company on the market. We'll look at, does this product work? Does it fit into what we want to push forward? Does it help another product in the lineup excel? And sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes there's no market for these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what is being in the industry for so long? What shifts have you seen recently? If you're trying to start a supplement company, if you're trying to start a supplement store, what shifts have you seen in the past, 5 years, where when you got into it, it just either didn't exist or it's a completely new game now?
So it's probably the social media influence is the number one thing. Products get hot for periods of time simply because they made those rounds. The disinformation side of it, or the lack of science behind a lot of why these things take off, that's much more unusual than when I got started. Back in the day, not that this didn't happen either. There were a lot of claims that were made that weren't real. But the social media influence and the younger generation not being as diligent into the products, right? Like when I started in it, when I was young and when I was competing, when we took a product, our intention was there was no chance we were taking it if we weren't committed to it for 3 to 6 months. And then we would see what the results were and we would make a judgment based on that. And it wasn't whether it worked that day, like I took it, it worked, or I took this and I should be Mr. Olympia tomorrow. Like we looked at it and went, okay, well, there's a science before it. I see how this will accelerate mine. I understand that building muscle and increasing performance isn't something that happens overnight. So I will look at this and I'll look at 3 months and I'll look at 6 months and I'll see if it worked out for me. And if it didn't, then we moved on to something else. And if it did, we continued with it. But we gave everything a legitimate shot. Now it's much more trendy on why people try something or do something. Or they put this belief into the person that's put it forward. So Garcinia. Does Garcinia work? Yes. It's an effective appetite suppressant. Is it going to cause you to shed 20 pounds in a month? No. Right? But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place and it's not a tool. But if you think anything is going to just instantly change what's going on with you, that's not how a quality supplement would generally work. Again, handful of exceptions for instant gratification products, like you take caffeine, you feel caffeine, you get the benefits of caffeine. and then that's it. And there's no long-term benefit.